There it goes. Bam.
This is Joshua Shores, and you're watching the Break It Down podcast. Break It
Yeah,
Down
that's right,
show.
man. We're doing things. Check this out. Joshua wrote a book. We're going to talk about this. Hey, I know, and I know we talked a little bit before we did this. One of the things that I have a challenge with in writing my book is that I did a lot of incredible things, but I am not a superhero. And so I struggle to not write a superhero book, but I am the hero in the story. And we did heroic shit. And so I struggle with that. How did you get by that monster?
Well, if you're counting on death is a completely kind of self-destructive book in the sense of like I point out a lot of what I did wrong and decisions I could have made better, and so like looking at that book compared to the next one that I'd like to write, which was about my time at 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion, that one is going to feel much more like that because everything went really well and it was like we did a lot of awesome stuff, and so like reflecting on the two parts of that, it's like, okay, counting on death was very much, it was like, how much do I want to beat myself down, in that book, and reflect on everything. So it was almost an opposite problem to have, but I have that coming up here with this next one because we really did a lot of crazy shit, and trying to break that down and sound humble about it when in reality it's like we did everything that you'd want to do. So that's gonna be something that I can't sympathize. I can sympathize a little bit with it yet, but yeah, it's definitely a concern, right? You don't want to come off as a guy that's like, look at me, I did everything. I did everything right, So
yeah. I'm really good at war. And it's funny, like someone will say something about war, and I'm like, oh, I'm really good at that shit. And that's true, right?
Yep.
But like, if I was to attach to you guys and go do my spy shit, you guys would be stoked that I was there. It'd take a minute because you're not going to trust me. You're not going to know me. But I know all of the things now. Why? Because I fucked up all of it. I screwed it up. I got shit wrong. I sent people to the wrong house. I did all of those mistakes, but I kept going. And here's a difference, like in my field in counterintelligence, and I think this will work for you. If you go and you deploy, you do an 8-month rotation, and you're just every day doing ops. The next deployment, you probably don't do that. Maybe you get one more deployment where you're outside the wire all the time. After that, you're too senior and you never touch it again. And Pete would say, I got to stay on the ground. I got over 1,000 combat missions. I got better and better and better and better and better until I finally got to the point where I could see the future because I knew us better than anybody else around me. Even like the colonels, because they didn't know, they knew the machine part of us, but I knew the people part of us. And so that familiarity is hard earned, and it breaks people's souls, breaks their minds, everything else. But does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that came out of my book for me personally was having someone that was in the unit before we went in 2-5 2nd Battalion 5th Marines read the book. And in my book I talk about as we were leaving 3-7, I think it was 3-7 was taking the baton and moving into Ramadi. And I said in the book that they weren't listening to us or hard-headed. They had their own idea of what they should be doing. And there is that little bit, the consistency for someone like you to be a part of any kind of operation is what would help carry the war to be, I think, a more successful, mission accomplishment, because everyone has their own idea. Unfortunately, especially working in government, there's not many ways to stand out, but one of them is to come up with new initiatives or new ideas, and then you have your name to that in a sense. And I think there's a lot of officers that want that. It's like, oh, I want to have that mission accomplishment, and whatever it was. So, I think seeing people repeat and ourselves doing the same thing, the same mistakes, when it could have been prevented through having like a liaison, almost like a professional combat advisor in a sense,
Right.
Yeah.
Very relatable to what my role was, right? So yes, I am. Here's how I liken my job. So first off, I knew what every commander's mission was going to be. Battalion level, brigade level, on up above those guys, sure, but like really company, battalion, brigade. And for everybody listening, that's 100 people, 1,000 people, 5,000 people. Like that's the size of these units in rough sketch. So I knew what their goal was. Close with and destroy the enemy, protect the force, enable your enablers, and teach and train. Those are the four goals. And my job is to help the commander win less and lose more. I mean, win more and lose less. Help the enemy lose more and win less. I had it wrong for a second there. But if I could do those things, doesn't matter what I did, and didn't matter what you call my job. I was like a combat advisor, and
Mhm.
I could get us to lose less a lot easier. But people hated it. They hated me for telling them bad news. If I was to come out to Helmand Province and help you guys, you'd be like, quit killing people all the time because everybody's
Yeah.
tried killing people. We have to understand, like, if we're going to make this government work, well, I can't find the government. And that's the bigger mission, right? So I'm not saying we're not going to kill people, but our default of who we got to find someone to kill, we got to close with and destroy. Okay, let's do that. But maybe don't kill that guy because he happens to be critical in the social fabric here. And if we
Yep.
kill that guy, which we did a lot of, and that's not rookie work, man. It's not. It takes a lot of
Mm-mm.
time to learn that shit. And you're right. We made a lot of the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over again.
And I think too, just reflecting on it 20 years after my time in Ramadi, and I got out of Helmand in 2008. So we're coming up on 18 years here.
Yeah.
But like looking at that and then just understanding more, reading a lot more, seeing how everything played out. When I left Helmand, I was like, this war is a special operations war. This should not be a front. And comparing that to my Ramadi deployment, where it
Right.
was like frontline, we weren't really even sure what we were doing, but we were Marines and we were trained to kill, and we were very good at that. And so,
Right. Yeah.
like, a part of me is like, why the Marine Corps exists, and I don't think we should ever change the Marine Corps' sole purpose, which is to go in and kill the enemy. But we have to have a force that's then ready and prepared, and if it's not in existence yet, we're already way behind. But one that
Yeah.
comes in and more manages and polices, because if we're going to be dabbling in other countries' business, once we kill the main influencers there, we have to have a force that's not the Marine Corps to come in there and do a good
Yeah.
job of what they do, and not expect the
Yeah.
Marine Corps to like continue to police. We should be on
Yeah.
guard and on the ready for the next extreme violence of action that's needed. And so they both need to coexist, and I don't think they both should exist in the same realm, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and you're describing a very complex problem. How do you ramp up one and ramp down the other?
Yeah.
And every commander who's got a force is like, send us. We're the best.
Yeah.
We're the best Marine force in the military. You have to send us. The sergeant major's barking at it. We are the best Marines. We will go to, and then you go the example I use. We'll take the Marines out of this. I think this is just the perfect example. You're going to send a bunch of tankers to Iraq, to Afghanistan. And their motto is death before dismount. Everybody listen to what I'm saying. Death
Yep.
before dismount. They will not get out of their tank because that is what they do. They tank. And they're
Yep.
motherfuckers for it, man. These guys love it. The second they get to Afghanistan, the first command is dismount.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. But don't expect good results. These guys just went and fired tank tables at NTC and were
Yep.
motherfuckers. They were awesome at it. But now they have to go engage with sheikhs, mullahs, imams, government officials, community leaders,
Yep.
and they're just not built for it. And when they do get the training, it's nothing compared to basic rifle marksmanship. Like when you teach a Marine to first shoot whatever their weapon system is going to be, it's not a 2-hour block of instruction.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
But the engagement part, it may be 2 hours, and not everybody touches that weapon system. And I'm saying weapon system just to kind of make a paralleler. But
Yeah.
like if you learn how to talk to sheikhs, you're not going to spend 6 months doing that. You're not going to spend 2 weeks doing that. You're going to spend zero time, relatively speaking, and that's going to be your primary mission.
Yep. Well, it's like when we went to Ramadi, back in 2005, it was the transition from a lot of the guys we went there with were Fallujah vets. And
Yeah.
so the mentality and the OIF vets too, OIF 1 vets, and so they had only experience in, clearing out cities, basically. Fallujah,
Right.
they were all dropped pamphlets and they said, get out or you're considered an enemy. And so that it was easy for Marines. You just go and kill everything,
Yeah.
right? Anyone that's left,
Yeah.
Minus kids, and if women are not being combative, then they survive. But but then we get dropped in Ramadi, and the training up until that point, I was a saw gunner, so it was, our bursts when we didn't have rounds were die motherfucker die. That's what we would say as a ditty. And so that's ingrained, and
Yeah.
so having that as a backdrop to go in, and then we get there and it's like, well, we really should have been saying like, here, take this Otis Spunkmeyer muffin and wave, instead of like preparing to kill everyone. And not that we did, but it was a very confusing time both for us, and after talking to officers after 20 years, it's like they were like, what are we doing? What were we doing? And it is that mentality, right? And it's appropriate.
And this is not an easy problem to solve, because commanders have an ethos, warriors have an ethos, and this kind of wide, like, you can teach an infantry guy to do anything, but you got to train them like it's serious. You can't just say, hey, go here and do that, right? And so we had these big gaps in our game, and that fucked people up. I mean, I'm looking back at this, I'm thinking, man, we were not at all prepared. I would go through the pre-deployment training. Nothing. There was nothing there. I'm like, none of this is relevant to what I'm going to. And as I went through it again and again and again, it was all just, you are deployable. That was it. Like, you were legally allowed to deploy. And it was nothing to do with capable, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that troops didn't train or do good military training. I put needles in veins. Yeah, I mean, I did all that shit. I learned how to relearned how to put on a tourniquet. I learned the rules of engagement. But my day-to-day job, nope. Yeah, it's tough. And then the pace of work, and we have the rule. I'm going to get off my soapbox here in a second, I promise. But your rule of engagement, it might be the same words every engagement, but a totally different intent behind it too.
Yeah.
Right? And
and they changed too. Like for us, it was changing. It was a evolving system where because the tactics are changing. They're like, okay, well, now not just military age males, but if it's a military age male on a cell phone, you can kill them. So it's like and it's just like this mind fuck as you're 19. I was 19 at the time. And I'm like, I'm just trying to do what like America sent me to do, which was kill the terrorists, right? No one told me I'd be going there and then training to kill the terrorists the whole time, and then trying to figure out how to win hearts and minds. Like that was something that was kind of, on the heels of our deployment, was people saying, oh yeah, by the way, guys, we also have to win hearts and minds. We're like, what does that mean?
I don't know what that means.
And we're all, well, that's the thing, like being grunts, we're like, yeah, that means 2 to the chest and 1 to the head, hearts and minds,
right?
So
exactly. Yeah. And then even then, check this out. So what I realized is that we were the insurgency. We were the ones that toppled the government. We were the ones that wanted to start a new government. And then on top of that, we found a counterinsurgency. We fought a counterinsurgency. Like, well, we're fighting ourselves. So we had all of these theoretic problems, with how we approach this stuff. And so we didn't need the hearts and minds. Heck, most everybody liked us as long as we weren't like in a really big fight. It was the government that had that needed, that craved, that was desperate for hearts and minds, and we never thought about that. We just told the governors what to do, where to go, what to say, and we never allowed them to govern, even govern poorly, so that we could say, let's improve from here. And then unit to unit, again, we didn't hand off that success. We all know this tale. Hey, we're about to leave. Everything's green and good for the next unit. Everybody, green, green, green. And then the next unit comes in. Everything's amber. Everything's red. And it's like, no. And because I often stayed, I could bring this wisdom in. And it's just little bits, because infantry units don't take wisdom well at first, right? It takes time. They're plenty smart and all that stuff. But when I say the thing that kept the colonel up most at night was not what you guys are all focused on. It was this right here, this thing. And some of them had like, yeah, okay, all right. And they still couldn't move in that direction, but they heard it because they'd been there and they understood, oh, yeah. That's like us, And so there was some familiarity, but it took a long time to get the machine to readjust, do its windage. But it took too long, and we didn't stay enough.
And you're dealing too with the human factor of pride, right? And I heard this the first time I ever heard this was in infantry squad leader school, but one of our instructors was like, you guys have to be careful of pride. He's like, well, we're all like, oh, we're all proud. We're proud to be Marines. We're proud, to be an infantry
Yeah.
Marine. And he's like, no, pride. He's like, the acronym. And he said, personal reason I didn't excel. And it's like pushing
Yeah.
your own agenda just because you need to. And I think just that human element in any of this is there. You know, you don't
Yeah.
want to be the shitbag that sends a bunch of people in to die. You don't want to be a shitbag that
Right.
sends in a bunch of your guys to kill other people that maybe don't
Right.
deserve, you know, aren't warranted death. But it's like, where's that balance? And I've said this throughout like the book, and I say this at a lot of the podcasts I've done, is if we're at a place as a country where all policies, you know, all political efforts have gone out the window and it's like everyone's calling for war, well then there aren't, in my opinion, you cannot put rules on something other than like not being out there raping and pillaging and like killing kids. But it has to be the most brutal and violent thing that you're going to do to gain that political advantage or that political goal. And if you're sending people to do that, then they have to just be allowed to do that, or else we will not win. You know, and that
Yeah.
the backside of that is coming in with what we talked about earlier, a better force that's meant to help like reestablish normalcy for wherever they're at. And that might be culturally, like we have to take that into consideration. It can't be the Western values. It can't be, you know, it's like let them stabilize and then get out, you know. But you know, this is a learning lesson for all of us that were involved with the 20-year war, right?
Yeah.
And I hope
Yeah.
we've learned. I hope we've learned something on it.
We haven't. We have a Center
Yeah.
for Lessons Learned. They've never once offered to talk to me. And
Yeah.
I've written stuff. I've invited myself. No thanks. And then I would watch people come out and talk about the Center for Lessons Learned, the things they learned, and I'm like, you're still behind. You're behind. You're not
Yeah.
professional grade. And I would say this to the dudes that can handle it, like you're not professional grade right now. You're way
Yeah.
behind. And those guys would be like, fuck. Because here's the and look, it's not that I'm omnipotent. Again, I'm not the hero. I made all these mistakes. I watch everybody else make that. I'm like, oh my God, we're all making the same mistake. And so the
Yeah.
first axiom is instability is the norm in this place that you're at. We bring instability. So
Yep.
it's heightened, it's amplified wherever we go. And we have to accept that. And if you're not making mistakes, you're making the first mistake. Like we make mistakes all the time. Can't even comprehend. And then if you can get through that, there are all kinds of wins all around you, but they're invisible because we think about A, B, C, D on to win. And it's like, well, you know what? That's a win over there because that governor talked to a dude he'd never talked to before because of his partner saying, hey, how do we communicate with the villages? Well, I'll call some people. And then they came in. That's a win. Doesn't feel like it if you're an infantry commander, but that's a win because you
Yep.
got someone who would never participated in the government to do that in one thing. Yes, there's bad people. Yes, people need killing and all that. But if you can't make someone from village X come to the government, well, then
Yep.
you're way behind. You're never going to win.
Yep. No, I
When you
totally
write about
agree.
brothers, I want to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Do you have something to say about that? I don't want to cut you off.
No. I was just agreeing with you with that process. So
Yeah. We all know about the brotherhood. I'm always curious at how we describe the brotherhood and give us some crazy brother stories where you're like, this shit no one would ever believe because in like the ethics, the culture, everything's different, especially when you're deployed and you got dudes that are keyed up to be keyed up and the rules are different, right? So talk about what it means to be brothers with people.
I think the best example is when you're in a firefight and you have good comms with someone and you know someone's pinned down and they're not in a good spot. Like my buddy was shot in the leg and he's sitting down. We're trying to find him because I had the 18 Delta with me and I'm like, we need to get to him, right? And we're trying to figure out where he is in this labyrinth of, you know, Afghan buildings and mud corridors. And so we're going down trying to find him. And in my mind, it wasn't like, oh, I hope I get to Kurt, to my buddy. It's like I have to get there no matter what. And it didn't matter.
Right.
You know, I'm going to get to him. And there was no concern for me getting shot, you know. There was no concern about any of that. It was, I mean, if there was, of course, not wanting to be, but like nothing slowed us down. We were just constantly moving. And that disregard for your own safety really is, you know, and putting your buddy first, not even thinking about the consequences of what it could be for you. That's brotherhood. You know, pushing through, you know, and it also goes both ways. If you have someone in your unit that's a selfish piece of shit, you know, or doesn't have anyone else's interests in mind, that's also where I would second guess running out into the middle of a road to go pick him up, and if he's under fire, any other person, my brother, I would go out there. Doesn't matter how many rounds are going, I'd go try to get him. But someone that doesn't play with the team, isn't aligned with what the rest of us or the brotherhood has, then that's where you start second guessing, and that's the difference. It's truly putting your life out there for that person.
When I think about, a lot of times I get to examine you all from the outside, and I get to see unit to unit and how people do it. When I think about like the brotherhood, there's also the leaders, the guys that set the standard, and it can be anybody, especially if you're on an outpost and it's just a bunch of 20-something-year-old dudes.
Yep.
I saw this E7, and he's infantry guy, Army, and he was getting ready to send his guys out, and he like an airborne kind of thing. He walked up to each guy, put his hands on them, and smiled. I could see the love that he had for these guys, and he checked every part of their uniform. All the stuff that they needed to make sure they have squared away. Next guy, come up, and he would put his hands on him. I was like, God damn, that guy is not going to let something simple. He's not going to let one of his E4s fuck up and forget his personal locator beacon. He's not going to, he's going to make sure they're right. And they're going to know that they might be tired of it, but they're going to know when it matters that even though he's not on that patrol, because he's the boss, that he cares about him and has their back. He wants them to be prepared ahead of time. And for sure, when something goes sideways, he's going to have their back. And man, oh man, I saw so many units where the troops couldn't trust the people above them for whatever reason. And you saw it in the performance in the field. They were a lot more hesitant. And I'm not talking just in firefights. They didn't know that they had the reins because somebody else they felt like had them. And I'll use this as an example so everybody can understand. A personal locator beacon is the thing you have on your shirt or your jacket or your body armor, whatever it is. And if you get into trouble, you push that button and it sends out a signal, and here comes Delta Force, right? And so they come and they save your ass. And we all had them. And the word got out that if that thing accidentally went off, you would get an Article 15. So this thing that's supposed to be used, even if it's only on for a couple of seconds, it sends a signal and it begins the process. That everybody was taping up the thing so that it couldn't accidentally deploy at all. And so if you needed it, and you had 10 seconds to do it, and because all you really got to do is unfold it, mash the button, and that's pretty much all you got to do. And the sergeant major were losing their mind. They're like, you will not get in trouble. We promise you will not get in trouble. Stop taping those things up. But to get the Joes to believe it, man, because they don't want to get in trouble, And so these are the little things that go into that brotherhood thing. It's like, you are going to be okay. We are going to protect you. You're going to be all right. Don't fucking lose sight of the standard. But here, the standard is don't tape that thing up. Here, the standard is take care of your guys before they walk out the gate so they know that when they're out there, that you're going to take care of them.
Yep, exactly. I mean, and it goes as far too, just like carrying that a little further. When we got to the buddy who was shot, all I had time to say to him was like, hey, dude, did you get shot or blown up? Because I didn't know,
Yeah.
And he's like, someone was like, oh, he got shot. And he just looked defeated because he was out of the fight. But my guys already went around the corner. And it's like, all right, like we're continuing this. Now I have these guys to continue to worry about. But it was like small victories, right? Checking the box to get him the dock. And then we kept moving. And so it's just a constant thing. You're there for everyone. Except yourself, and then you look at it too. It's like, okay, well, if I'm out of the fight, then I can't support them. And so I have to keep myself in the fight too. So it's not these decisions that are just careless. It's like a decision that is like, is this going to be better for the unit or is this decision that I'm making selfish? So
there's a lot of growing you have to do to go out on a patrol. I had to know first I have to be ready, right? I'm an add-on. And so if I can't perform, if I'm not giving the boss something that he doesn't get from anybody else, then I don't need a spot there. And I've got to make sure that every time I go out, I find him a piece of gold. Like, here's some gold. Here's some gold. And that way I'm earning my spot because the guys around me don't have to care about me. So I have to perform. That's the first standard I have to meet. And then I don't want to cost anybody else any extra weight. So, I drink all my water. I carry my own stuff. I bring my own food. I would, that Beachbody P90X or whatever that thing was, that workout was going on. I can't do that because if I start that, I'll be too fucked up and I won't maybe be able to run that day because my quads are blown out. I still worked out, but I had to work out in a very deliberate fashion because I'm thinking about if there's a firefight and I have to shoot, move, and communicate, or even just move and communicate, that I have to be able to do that. And it can't be that you guys got to come rescue me because now I've blown my Achilles out or something because I
Yep.
was trying to have a beach body.
Yep. No, it's purpose, right? What's the purpose for each individual within that unit's what's their combat purpose? If it's an
Right.
attachment and you're supposed to be running your mouth more than you are running your legs, because you're an advisor or a
Yeah.
liaison, then you have to focus that exercise, be it an exercise physically or an exercise with reading some of the reports that are coming in with new intel. That's all the time you have for that. And what's better,
Yeah.
you've sifted through all the new reports with maybe some big changes in a Sheikh's influence, or
Right.
that you can do 50 push-ups. What's more important
Yeah.
for your role,
I love
and
it. Yes.
so
Yes.
yeah.
I love
and,
asking
and,
somebody like go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I think it has to be understood on all levels, like from the ground up. Just because if you were a soldier, and you're call it an E8, right? And
Hmm.
some of the grunt guys, if you're like, oh, he's a disgusting fat body, it's like, well, maybe in terms of your standards for uh, carrying your M249 saw and being combat effective, but you know, the more important part is that he spends all his time reading these reports or doing these things and building relationships,
Yeah.
which is a better weapon in the long run because you know they can keep sending bodies. Look at Russia right now in Ukraine; they can keep sending
Hmm.
bodies. But the thing that's going to end that war is some kind of strategy outside of that. So I don't know. I think it has to be understood.
You said a mouthful there. I mean, I had this wonderful interpreter, but he's in his 50s at the time, and we're up in Afghanistan climbing them mountains. And the captain who ran this, he ran a platoon because we were way out there, so you needed a more senior guy. Because the lieutenant thought it was hilarious to like try to drive people into the ground physically during a patrol. And I'm like, what in the fuck is
Like
this guy doing?
his own guys or what?
Yeah, he thought it
Really?
was cool to do that. You got to meet the standard. Like, no, dummy. Like, we're on foot. So just everybody watching. If you're in Afghanistan in certain areas, if you're 45 minutes away from your little cluster, your camp or whatever, you're in the future and nobody's coming. Not
Mhm.
until that firefight's over. Right. And so if you get anywhere and you got guys with their hands on their knees, it's not because they're not hard. It's because it's a very rugged, hard area to travel around in. And you're 10,000 feet up, sometimes more if you climb up a mountain. And so you go at the pace that you can maintain the ability to fight. And that might expose you to some harm, but that's when you flex in that movement and that shooting and everything. But this guy, he didn't get that. And it was, I was one of the people that told the boss, I'm like, hey, listen, because that's part of what I do, right? I was like, hey, listen, this guy, he had me ready to stop wanting to go. Like, if we go up this next hill on purpose and we're trying to do it fast, then I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to be able to maintain it. And
Yep.
luckily, he didn't make us go up that hill. But goodness gracious, you had people cracking. It wasn't good. And these young
Yep.
dudes cracking.
Yep.
Yeah. The thing that I was going to say about that though, the captain that ran that place, he did a good job. And so we had this guy Fareed, he was my interpreter, and he was wonderful at that. And he could help guide the other interpreters and check them too. He was a green card holding American, right? So he wasn't a citizen yet, but enormously valuable. But we had to go at his pace. He wasn't the weakest link. He was the most important person who could go this fast, and
Yep.
that's how fast we went because he couldn't fly up hills. And here's a mistake I made. I'm working the dog shit out of him, like I did all my interpreters. Because if I'm not outside the wire and writing reports and putting people in danger, then I'm not doing my job. And he's like, Pete, can we please go back to the main camp? I've not eaten right in days. And it hadn't occurred to me for 1 second that he had his Islamic eating beliefs and he wasn't getting the food he needed in the chow hall. And I failed him by not
Yep.
ensuring that we went over to see the Afghans enough to eat their food, or that I told the chef there. I'm saying chefs. I'm like those guys, but I hadn't hooked him up, and so for all my capability, I still had simple lessons to learn.
A basic life need that he wasn't having met. Yeah. Food,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. It hurts my heart right now when I say that. Like I was
Yeah.
so devastated, and
Yep.
because I asked so much of him, and I was really good. Look, I'm good at working with interpreters. The first thing I
Yep.
would do when I got a new one was I'd take him down to the interpreter contractor, and I would say, "Hey, this guy needs a raise." you
Yeah.
know, because we're not taught to do that ever. But of course, like the government's like, yeah, of course, yeah, he's been here, yeah, here's a raise, here, double his money, Not thinking about the buy-in from those guys, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's Pete
Yeah.
War stories. I'm gonna shut up about that.
We had one of our interpreters, a similar thing. When we first got to Afghanistan, it was a British fob we were on, and
Hmm.
the only U.S. troops that had been really in the area were Army convoys going back and forth, and so a lot of the interpreters we got, there's a Green Beret team there, but they weren't doing very many ops at the time, and so the interpreters we got were only used to working with British or Army soldiers, and
Right?
our first firefight we went in and just destroyed. This is like I think it was February or January of 2008. So we were like
Yeah.
literally some of the first people in Afghanistan for, before any kind of surge, before Camp Leatherneck existed. And we're just trying to find out where
Right.
everyone's at. Right. And so we're out for a few days at a time. We do like 3 or 4 days at a time. And the interpreter, after we got in our first gunfight, I think 2 of them quit right away. And then the guy that was with my platoon, my squad, he came up to me. He's like, "Hey, do you think I could, carry a gun next time we go in there?" And I was like, I hadn't really thought about that, Abdullah, but yeah. And I tried to get him a gun, and they were, all the command was like, "No, you're not giving him a fucking gun."
Right.
And so what I ended up doing, I gave him, it was probably some people might say it's a stupid move, but I put myself in that dude's shoes, and we were
Yeah.
asking him to come interpret it with us. And I gave him my
Yeah.
9 mil, my sidearm.
Yeah.
I said, "Here, take this." Jokingly said, like, "Don't shoot me with it." This is before a lot of the blue on blues happening, but I was
Yeah.
like, "Hey,
Yeah.
don't shoot me with it," and he was so grateful. He never had to use it, but every time we were in a gunfight, he was holding it, like this,
Yeah.
running around with us, and it gave him that little bit of comfort to be in some bad spots,
Yeah.
and he was right there. And so because of that, it's like, okay, we have a solid interpreter now who trusts us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There's risk, right? Here's the thing: is like we're
Yep.
so risk adverse in a risky place. You know,
Hmm.
we'll bound Overwatch. We'll do the company defense. We'll do all these things that expose us to tremendous danger. But if we rely on one of our partners to be a partner, it's like, whoa, you can't give that guy a gun, and it drives us
Yeah.
crazy, right? And
Yep.
maybe you shouldn't give that one guy a gun, but
Yeah.
boy, look, I always let the warrior out. What does the warrior need? Get out of his way.
Yep.
If this interpreter needs a gun and it makes sense, then fuck yeah, give him a gun. My
Yeah.
buddy Johnny Walker, he was with the SEALs all the time. He was my interpreter for a little bit. He actually, it's in his book. He came to me and said, "I'm having trouble in town, and I'm getting into like this violence. This is dangerous trouble. I need money for a gun." Like, well, let me get over to the bank and get you some fucking money. You know, that's not
Yep.
like what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, "How much you need?" He's like, "Yeah, it's $200." I'm like, $500. Get a good one
Yeah.
and take care of
Yep.
your business. And this is hard business, everybody. This is like, I know people are going to die business, but I didn't know if Johnny was on our side or their side. You never know. You're always wondering because he had access to go back and forth. He was on our side. He's
Yep.
an American today, but yeah, man, you need a
Yeah.
gun?
It's
Let's get you a gun.
that risk, right? Yeah. Risk versus reward, and being able to have a position within a unit to say, okay, we'll make this work.
Yeah,
Is It's an awesome feeling to see it actually going the way you need it to. So
yeah, 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 man. That you're right. It is an awesome feeling when you are winding up your combat career, not the garrison part of it, but like we're going to leave Afghanistan or wherever you were for the last time. Were you cognizant like this is going to stop soon? And were you enjoy? Because I know I enjoyed it. I enjoy going on patrol. We got in a firefight. That wasn't my favorite thing, but it was still awesome. I got to admit, it was still awesome. So, did you have a sense that this was going to be it, and were you able to enjoy it at all?
yeah, I mean, I got out in 2008, and I left in, what was it, July of 2008. So
Yeah,
my last combat deployment was after Ramadi, where we lost 16 KIA, and we had
yeah,
I don't know how many hundreds wounded. And then my second deployment was the 31st MEU, so that was like a garrison experience more. We were a boat company, so I had to do I was had that experience, which was great, and I had to extend my contract to do the MARSOC deployment. And I knew going into that was going to be my last one. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I wanted to do another combat tour. Especially, I had just picked up sergeant. I got done with infantry squad leader school.
right.
I didn't want to waste all of that experience especially because a lot of the guys that were there were very young, and none of them had been to
Yeah.
combat. Um, so for me, it was kind of like a retribution for, or like a, yeah, just like it's like I owe my country and I owe God, I owe, I owe myself to go prove that I've earned my right to call
Yep.
myself a solid Marine, and I wanted to do that. And so that whole deployment was that mentality going into it, and it was an amazing time. I mean, it was, if you talk to anyone, from that first, it was the first ever Bravo Company MARSOC, that first ever deployment with all of both platoons. It was the best deployment any of us were on. We killed Taliban, we dropped bombs, we threw hand grenades in combat. It was CQB, it was far rural, urban, it was wild. But everyone, the thing that made that deployment great as compared to my Ramadi one is that, we knew that the fighters that we were fighting were solid. They were Taliban, they were good fighters compared to the insurgents in Ramadi. And the
Yeah.
other thing was that only 2 guys got wounded, seriously wounded, where they had to be sent home. One,
Yeah.
my buddy Kirk, got shot in the leg, and another guy from first platoon took a piece of shrapnel to his forearm from a mortar. Everyone else that was wounded there, it was like a minor wound. They were able to continue fighting and just bandage themselves up. But that is a good deployment. When you look at that, we weren't hitting the IEDs that they had in Sangin, but we drove through Sangin,
Yeah.
before it was ever a name that was really known. We drove through it and didn't even get contact there. And that was in 2008.
Right.
So overall, it was a great deployment. And leaving that, it was kind of like I left on as high, on a high as much as I could, knowing that we didn't know where the war was going. And we even had the joke back then. There were kind of memes starting. You'd see like the Chuck Norris ones. Remember those? Like,
Yes. They were
yeah,
great.
those kind of just coming out. Yeah. And, but one of the memes I saw was we were winning when we left. And I was like, damn, that's a good one to leave on. Cause like,
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what they said in Vietnam. But,
Yeah.
it's what can you
Yeah.
say about it? We did what we were supposed to, we did our best while we were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we were
Yeah. I
set
mean,
up to
this is
fail.
the reality. We all read the books. We did the push-ups. We did all of the things, and we tried our damnedest, and it did not go our way. And like when I talked about all these generals that get all these accolades, they're like, well, they're 0 for their career. None of those guys pulled off a win. None of them figured out what we needed, got us
Yep.
what we needed. We did a lot of things well, but we missed a lot of simple shit, and that's just true. But it is awesome when you're on a great deployment and the unit is active and doing things, whatever it is, whether it's fighting or governating and all those things. It really is. It's an incredible job. For me to have influence with a '06 or an '07 or '05. All these guys that are making decisions, and I'm helping them do their job better. I didn't have to tell them what to do. I just had to tell them what was going on in town. And
Yep.
then, or when their unit was out in town, either way, whichever it was, and that was kind of how I helped units. I mean, the bad guys for sure, but I would funnel most of that over to the het or just everybody watching. I would funnel that to the other spies in the area. I'm like, hey, you guys are focused on threat. And what I always say, it maybe this makes sense to you, Josh, maybe it won't, but I didn't look for threat, because if I didn't look for it, it would just show up all the time. Hey,
Yeah.
Pete, I like you. Let me tell you something, right? And I'd say,
Yep.
go tell Josh. That's his job. That's what he's going to do.
Yep.
And then you would sop up this stuff. And so I would say, you all are looking for a needle in a haystack. I'm over here in this field over here, full of needles, all needles. I just get them by the bucket and throw them in. And when the commander says, stop giving me needles, I will. But
Yep.
they never did. And that's that savvy part of the combat thing that we all try to do together. And man, it is an incredible thing. And I'm nostalgic about it. Gotta admit, I crave it. I don't need it, but I crave that type of experience again. And when I get little doses of it in my life, because my life's pretty crazy and busy, man, I'm like, oh, this is just like combat. I love it.
Yep. It's a drug. And I talk about that a little bit in the book, but it depends. It sounds, I never did the spy end of things like you were doing or anything, but but you still have that rush from probably one of your meets doing something. And combat is very much like that, where depending if you do, at least from my experience and from talking with people, I did 4.5 years in the Marine Corps, but it was a very busy and very tumultuous 4.5 years. And once you have that taste of combat, it's a very hard thing to not seek and like not search for that rush again. And I think that's a huge thing with even getting out. If you got out after having that experience after 4 years, or you got out after 20, it's still sitting in there. It's just a matter of how much has your body learned to keep thriving on it. And I think that makes the transition back difficult, and it's something that you can't really necessarily even pinpoint. It's just like it's just like you're striving for that feeling of the gift of fear, in a sense, like like looking at, hey, look at this thing was coming for me, and I identified it and I survived it, and now you're constantly seeking out or looking for that next threat, and it just doesn't go away. And so when you don't have that in your life anymore, it's like, well, what now? Everything's easy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, I mean, and I think one of our challenges is that young men need, at least a number of them, right? A lot of us are in the military, but we feel the need to prove up, to meet some
mhm.
kind of standard. And you and I both have met dudes who didn't join the military. Their life turned left and they went right, whatever, and so they didn't end up in the military. This includes Tito Ortiz, who revealed to Scott and I, he's like, I should have joined. I never got a chance to prove myself. And we're like, dude, you proved yourself.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
fucking Tito Ortiz. You're one of the baddest men on the planet. You are tough as fucking. There's no denying. But that meant nothing to him. It didn't. Like
yep.
our stamp of boom, you're combat approved. He's like, no, I'm never gonna feel like I should have done it. I should have done it, right? And so when you put someone in that environment and they get to, it is good. But then when it's taken away and you no longer can prove up, it does fuck us up.
It is, and it's tough. It's tough too, because I struggled for a long time, for years after I got out. I felt like I failed my brothers, going back to that, right? What makes a brother? I felt like I left them after I got out of the Marine Corps. It was like, how selfish of me. And I felt, that I'd hear them going on another deployment and I wanted to be with them. And so that was a huge thing that I struggled with personally, was like, oh, I didn't do enough. As much as, like, reflecting on it now, we did a lot, but I felt for years I didn't do enough, and I should have contributed more in some way. And that was a huge struggle for me. You know, just feeling like, I did it. I did what Tito Ortiz wanted to do, but I still didn't feel like I did enough. I
Yeah,
don't know if you've experienced that at all, or
I have. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh, that movie, The Outpost. That's what it was. When I read Scott's book, I could have helped those guys. I
yeah,
should have been there, and I was fucking there. It's
yep,
like I wasn't with Scott and those guys. I wasn't at the outpost, but if I had been, I could have helped those guys. And whenever I read
yep,
Scott's book, I think I've told them this. Like it makes me PTSD ish, because I'm like, God damn it, I can help these guys. Why
yeah.
am I not there with them, right? And does that in any way make sense to you at all?
Oh yeah, totally. It's a feeling of it's a helpless it's a helpless feeling, but you want to be a part of the helpless team, because it's like,
Yeah,
maybe that one thing would change with me there, and
yeah,
if we all died
yeah,
trying, then it was worth it.
yeah, 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 yeah. And I was really good at my job. I mean, I truly feel, not just know, but I feel like I could help those guys. I should have been there. Because one of the things in my job is like it's my job to find out about that needle in the haystack. Hey, there's going to be a bombing tomorrow. Let's button up. You may not prevent the bombing, but like we can button up and avoid it.
Yeah,
And so I have to put myself in great harm. I have to expose myself to danger that nobody else should have to. Because if I don't do that, nobody else will. And then somebody might die because of that. And those green on blue incidents that happened, and they happened in the places that I was in, break my heart. Like, I hate it,
yep,
it hurts.
yep.
When you decided to write the book, it's not a long book. What
No,
kept the word count down for you? This is not a judgment. I'm just curious about, like,
no.
100, 142 pages.
Yep. I wanted a book that was like meat and potatoes. Here's what, if you're a young Marine or a young soldier, or anyone that's really interested in what combat was really like, um, this is it. I didn't want people to understand my background as a kid growing up. I talk about it. It's a very high level. I didn't want to develop the characters of every person that I address in the book, because I didn't feel like that was the core of the message. The core of the message is, here are some events that occurred, and how I feel we could have done them better, and my opinion on just the entire war in general, and some of these experiences I talk about go in depth as to like, my feelings involved with it, but it's written in a way that isn't. My hope with it is it's not something that a young Marine or someone like I would have been, back then, looking at a book and saying that's too big. I'm not going to read that, because let's face it, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of Marines, young soldiers do not like to read, especially now when we are consuming everything via video.
Yeah.
You know, I just wanted something that was straight and to the point and simple. So the KISS method.
Let me kiss it with you here, everybody. This is
Yeah.
Counting on Death. That's the book right there. Down below me is the link. You guys know what I always say. Buy two and buddy read. Even better, start a little book club. I happen to know the author. He'd love to talk to your book club. This is great. It's
I
a
would.
great way to support authors, and this book is fantastic. I have not finished it, and being honest with everybody else. I started, I read through some pieces to kind of get a sense of it. And you're right, it's meat and potatoes. It reminds me of, and you probably have heard this, but like Helmet for a Pillow. Like these
Yeah.
firsthand, immediate things, these tactical things. Like when I go on a patrol, the first thing I do once we leave the camp is I look down at my shoes to remind me, my boots, whatever. Like I look at the dirt. I'm like, I'm on this dirt. This is not there.
Mhm.
This is here, and the new rules apply, right? And that's a thing I always talk about because you do have to look at that differently. And I got that from the little bit of your book that I read. I got that right away. It was very, I would say, guess granular. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly what I wanted out of it. Yeah. It's some of
Yeah.
the feedback I've had from people that never served or never deployed it, was they appreciated the day to day that I talk about in it. So it's very much um, a kind of a window into what Ramadi was like in 2005 and what deploying as a 19-year-old kid was.
Yeah.
Because that perspective is completely different than a lot of the books I've read, written from, higher level officers, staff level. It's
Yeah.
very much just a honest telling of a 19-year-old in combat. So
This is a question I think. So I try to go talk to high school kids from my hometown and another town down here by me where I'm at. And I think about that 18, 19-year-old version of Josh and what do I want to tell him? Because not when I like when I, who's going to join the military,
yeah,
and I'm thinking this person could be in combat in weeks, you
yeah,
know, and because I'm usually talking to seniors, if they're younger, okay, years, but still, like, what would they? No one else has the combat credentials that I have. So how do I talk to that person? What message can they receive?
yeah.
And that's good. So I'm going to get through this, and if I think this is the right book, which I imagine that it probably is, I want to recommend these things because this is how a parent or a kid. Again, here's the link down below, everybody, for Counting on Death. You had Colonel Thompson write your foreword. Tell me why you made
Yep.
that choice.
So he was our company commander in Ramadi in Alpha Company, and it was really important for me. I wanted to have his almost like a blessing in a sense, or a stamp of like, okay, like this is a good representation of what life was like when we were all there. And because I was a lance corporal at the time, in Ramadi, I wanted someone that had the age and the time that was there with me to read it and say, okay, is this something that you're proud of, or is this something that you know that you don't even want
Yeah,
anything to do with? And I didn't want to publish it unless it was something that, as hard as it is to read sometimes, is something that they could say like, yeah, it was confusing and tough, but I'm proud that we all served together, and I'm proud that this book exists to share our story.
yeah,
And so that's why I had him do it, and that's why even a lot of the like the blurbs on the back of the book are all from either Marines or combat. I think there's a soldier. The rest, one soldier with Michael Cook, and then the rest are all Marines. So I really wanted the pure review of it versus like some at one of the big name publication news companies out there giving his thoughts on it when maybe he hasn't had any experience there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's the right answer. It's just, yeah, you have insight to offer, and so does the colonel. And
Mhm.
it's good to be able to share it from that point of view. Um, yeah, man. What's these things are always fun. What is the? Oh, by the way, I wanted to say this a while ago and I forgot to say it, but I love to bring this up. There's two things I love to ask people. Uh, and one of them is just, we're so desperate about push-ups and pull-ups and stuff. How many push-ups did you do in a firefight?
Yeah, exactly. I'd push my ass off the ground to run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't know if this will apply to you because it doesn't always apply, but the guys who are like me or special forces or SEALs, I love to ask this question: did you fire more rounds in combat or have conversations?
Oh, over the whole time, you have more conversations. I mean, at the end of the
Right?
day, that's
Yeah,
people, and that's what the thing I've talked about with people, especially with the current culture or the current climate of the world right now, especially in the
yeah,
U.S. They're like, oh, what if what's civil war? And it's like everyone thinks that like war is just guns everywhere and everything's blowing up at all times, and it's like no,
right.
it all takes place in city centers,
Yeah,
unless you're going out and doing the patrols like we were a rule. But for the most part, like there was a firefight we were in. This dude was pumping water as we're shooting at each other, Taliban, and we're shooting. And right before my
yeah,
buddy got hit, he looks over at a dude that's just pumping water from a well, and then he
yep,
gets shot in the leg. But it's like,
yeah,
that dude's just living his life, and that's how it is kind of with
yeah,
with all of it. So yeah, definitely more conversations. I fired off so many more conversations that were probably stupid as hell, but
yeah,
they were fun, and that's where a lot of the good memories
yeah.
come from.
Now imagine if those are directed at the adversary or the partner, right? And then I love
Yeah.
to ask that follow-up question, given all these conversations that we had with them, not us. Um,
Mhm.
what did you prepare for more, the shooting or the talking? And it's
Well,
always
that's
the shooting, you know?
yeah. Yep.
And so look, we got to be lethal, but also so much of our things. And I'm big on saying this. It's as long as we're talking, there won't be war, and we talk while there's war. So you're just trying to get the words to get over the top of the shooting. And the bulk of
Yep.
it is talking, but it's hard to get us to believe in that. It's hard to get us to develop mastery of that weapon system.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like, and then you compare your words to smart bombs, right? It's like, are you just blasting out incoherent screams and petty accusations at your enemy, or are you
yeah,
being more surgical with your bombs and using ones that might influence versus you know create a division? So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Good words for today and our current events and everything too.
yeah,
These lessons are there. Yeah, so when you get into the guy with the pump, man, that's great. I was having a meet with a guy during and a firefight. Look, we were in an area where firefights often broke out, so it's like, oh, we have 25 minutes. We can be here before the shooting starts sometimes. And so I was having a meet with the guy, and we were kind of tucked away in like in a not tucked away. We were standing in front of his business, which was kind of tucked away. And all of a sudden, the firefight showed up. And maybe for next 2 weeks we wouldn't have one, but today was the day we had a firefight. And so he and I are talking. And we're just like talking, talking, talking. And they're not shooting at us, but they're kind of shooting towards us, but they're not shooting at us. And there's really no reason where we're going to get hit. And all of a sudden, like the fire started kind of crawling over towards us a little bit. And so little bits of the building were hitting us in the face, right? And the entire time we're
yeah.
like, yeah, whatever, it's fine, because it's still not coming towards us. Wait, like one of us, I can't remember who now, one of us had a little nick on their cheek. Was it him? Was it me? I can't remember for sure. But like bits of the building were hitting us in the face. We kept talking, and it took me years to realize, oh, that's insane.
Yeah.
Why didn't we just go inside? Or we didn't, because that's combat. Weird shit happens.
Well, at that same time, I'm sure if you're talking with you know, a local, they're not wanting to show that they're afraid, and you're not wanting to show that
Yeah,
you're afraid, and so there's this like playing chicken with the bullets in a sense of like, okay,
yeah,
well, neither of us are afraid, so we're just gonna both sit here until we get shot.
right. Yeah, and really, that's really what it was I have this meeting. This firefight's not going to be long. We're safe. There's no reason to. Of course, we should have gone inside. Of course, but yeah, like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna. Like when the round. I mean, how many of us did this when the round comes in? You just stand there. You're like, yeah, that's incoming. It's gonna be over there somewhere, or like outgoing. You're like, oh, it's outgoing. Don't worry, guys. Get guys on the ground. That's outgoing. Don't worry. We all did that shit.
You there? I lost you.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, I was saying how we all did the thing. We're like outgoing, incoming. And we wouldn't go down to the ground unless we absolutely had to, no matter what. And we'd just be like, that's
Yeah.
outgoing. Don't get up. Goddamn candy ass. Get off the ground. Never mind that it's terrifying that a big boom just went off,
Yeah.
It's so funny. What's a funny thing that happened during a firefight?
Oh man. Well, my buddy, it's always has to do with the bathroom a lot of times, right? My buddy had to take a shit, and so we covered it, as he's like, cover me, guys, I can't hold it anymore. And so, he's sitting there laying on his side, and we're just like shooting suppressive fire over this berm. As he's just taking a dump, and we're all laughing about it because he had to get all his gear off, right? He had to get, all that stuff down, and so that's funny. And just things like I talk about it in the book a bit, but our lieutenant in Ramadi, he was a left-handed, he had his rifle set up for left-hander, used left-handed rifle. And so every time he would run, a lot of times his magazine would drop out of his magazine well. Right. So he'd be running and in combat, and it would drop, and he'd hear it hit the deck, and then he'd kick it to where he was running to, you'd hear him. He didn't like cuss at all, but you'd hear him, he'd be like, fuck, and he'd kick it across the street. And I think we had upwards of like 30 something times we all had witnessed throughout that deployment, him dropping his mag, either just walking or running on patrol. And so I always, we all felt bad for him, but that was pretty comical, and taking the time to make note of it, while you're in a firefight. It's like, oh yeah, remember we have to put that on the tally. He dropped his mag again, So
I patrolled on foot so much that one day at some point during the day, so everybody watching, if you have body armor, it's got like a ballistic blanket, and then it'll have like a ceramic plate. That's the common form. There's a lot of forms, but that's a common one. I patrolled so much that the Velcro gave out, and somewhere along the way, my back blanket had fallen out. I had no idea. I came back and I'm like, hey, wait a second. And then I told the other guys, I'm like, did you guys see this thing fall out? And they're like, no. Where could it have gone? We had no idea. And thankfully, I went into the supply sergeant, just gave me a new body armor. He's like, you wore that thing out, man. I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. But that's hilarious too. Like I'm walking around like, because, you would think you would notice, but that shit is so heavy and so hot. You're just like, oh, fuck. You're just miserable.
Yeah. You're just miserable. And you're not even thinking about it. And if it was lighter, you're like, man, I must be getting like in better shape.
Yeah.
Because
my traps.
It all feels lighter.
Yeah. So we're about to wrap up here. I guess let's throw this to you. What do you either want to ask me, or what else do you want to chat about these last couple of minutes before I wrap up? And thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for talking about this stuff. I love that we get to do these things. We're the first generation that really can like do this stuff, this immediate, and as torn up as we all are, like all the generations of veterans, this stuff I think is curative.
No, I appreciate it. And thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. There's nothing, I mean, of course I could ask a million questions of you because you have so much to pick out of that brain. But in general, what are your feelings? I guess I'll say like geopolitically, what are your feelings going forward on the world as a whole right now? What do you see? Are you concerned, or do you just think this is just yet another period in time where we're hyper aware?
Yeah. I would say that when we do things abroad, we are often ill-principled, and we don't hold the people who make the poor choices accountable. And so they just get to come up with whatever good idea they want. They mean well, they're smart, they're well-credentialed, but they don't reliably deliver. And so when I ask you, like, have you fired more rounds or have more conversations? Like, more conversations. And what have you done more? If I fired, worked on shooting my rifle. And that's all fine, but don't expect anyone to be great at conversations that make a difference. And so that's what I understand is I don't care who the president is. I don't care who the secretary of state is. They don't understand. Like, my ability to help the Secretary of State was so minimal, it basically didn't exist. And someone like me, working on the way I worked, should have had a direct line to someone higher than me on the state side. So I could say, hey, here's an opportunity. Hey, this ain't working. But we didn't. And there was so much arrogance in that system that it was impossible for us to get these things right reliably enough to achieve what I would call a win.
Mhm.
So there you go. So I don't think that's changed, and I don't think that's Republicans or Democrats. I think that's a vertical communication
Yeah.
problem, and that to develop true masters at being on the ground. There are them, those people, but those people don't have audience with anybody who does the theoretic, it's like above strategy. Those things they don't have audience with those guys, and so you can't tether that. You can do that in the military. Like, we're gonna need this
Yeah.
platoon to sit here and fight this space. But even that's tenuous, right? There's times when the platoon's like, why the fuck are we enrolling people in bats and hides?
Yeah.
You know, we're here to
Yep.
kill people.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
And
that.
yeah, I hope that helps. I hope that helps somebody else
Yeah.
too, you know. And the other thing I would say in general is there's a lot of information operations going on. If you guys feel like, if you read 3 words of a headline and you're already in a rage, you are being fed. Stop.
Mhm.
I'm not saying don't be informed, but
Yep.
when you feel that rage, that negative impulse, that emotion, that's someone hitting you in a way to cause you to do something on your phone, whatever it is. And so beware the emotions that come out of a news story, because you should be a little more impassive and unflappable when you read the news. A little more. I'm not saying don't
Great.
care. I'm not saying don't get involved. I'm not saying don't be educated, but watch your flappability and make sure that you're comfortable with where you're at. Anything else in closing
That's all.
before we go, John?
No, that's awesome advice. And I want, just to close on that from my end, all the things that I wrote about, a lot of the things I wrote about in Counting on Death that were like my own lessons learned that I hoped for someone else to gather. A lot of those were emotionally driven decisions and emotionally driven experiences. And I learned a lot from my own failing in those, to take a step back and try to see things from another perspective, which I think led to a lot more of the successes that we had in our time in Afghanistan. So 2 different
Yeah.
combat pictures, emotionally driven versus like as well informed as you can be. And that's my ask of any American right now is don't just take one thing for word. 2 things can exist in the same story, and try to seek those out, seek the information. Don't rely on someone else to tell you what it is. So
Yeah. Yeah. And if you run to, they got this wrong, I don't agree with it, now they should die.
Yeah.
Slow down. Slow down. Because combat, let me tell you something. Combat sucks. Combat is not
Yep.
gentle on you ever. So, Josh, thank you
Correct.
very much. Hang in there for a second. Let's say goodbye to you.
Thank
All
you,
of you all. I might do another show today, maybe not. Either way, I appreciate you all being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you for watching. If you have something you want to say, hit me in DMs. I'm glad to talk to you. You can email me, peterbreakitdownshow.com. You want to converse with Josh and set up a book club, let me know. I will set it all up. I want to be here. I want to be helpful for you guys. I want to, especially in these times, like when we're looking around being like everything's crazy. Talk to me, ask me questions. I'm glad to get experts on or provide you my experience-focused responses. All right, everybody. I will see you all later. Hang in there, Josh.